Parents try as hard as they can to do the right thing. They aren't purposely out to get you. They don't want to be Darth Vader. As Luke says, I know there is good in you and I have faith in you, even though the rest of the universe thinks that you're a schmuck.
Episode 74. George Lucas is autistic. Welcome to the Autistic Culture Podcast. Each episode, we dive deep into autistic contributions to society and culture by introducing you to some of the world's most famous and successful autistics in history.
Before we get started, a quick disclaimer on how we use the word autistic. The purpose of this show is not to diagnose the people or characters we discuss as autistic. While some may have announced being autistic, what we're really sharing here is our observation of what is representative of autistic culture. It can sometimes be difficult for autistic people to celebrate our natural tendencies and traits due to the perception of autism as a disorder that needs to be fixed, a long history of damaging medical interventions to get autistics to fit in with mainstream culture, and protective masking skills many of us have developed to try to stay safe.
Whether you are autistic or just love someone who is, your hosts, Dr. Angela Lauria, the linguistic autistic,
and licensed psychological practitioner Matt Lowry, welcome you to take this time to be fully immersed in the language, values, traditions, norms, and identity of Autistica.
It's the end of the season, Angela.
Our last episode, season 2, we did it.
I can't believe it. It's been quite the ride. I'm looking forward to season 3, but I wanted the last episode of season 2 to be something special. So
something special, something familiar, something exciting.
Especially considering that we started off this season with motion pictures being autistic. I figured it was the right time to do one of my idols. And I want to talk about a man named George Lucas today.
Oh, I've never heard the name.
Yeah, and there may be many people out there who don't know him. This is we're going to
know George Lucas.
We're going to try to condense this from my 8-hour version into something more manageable. I have no idea how long it's going to take. We'll just roll along with the ride.
It may be our longest episode. I am very surprised you have waited so long to do this episode. We obviously talked about Industrial Light and Magic. I think that was, I don't know, episode 2 or 3 or something. It was like
one of the first ones we did.
But this is kind of your thing. This was like a major spin in your life. You're kind of like famous for your George Lucas body of knowledge.
Yeah.
What do you think has taken you so long? Is it just like there's so much? It feels like, how could I possibly talk about everything?
I don't want to screw it up. And that's the thing, because anybody, Abed Nadir would tell you that, the first season that we do something, not necessarily the best work. We're kind of finding our footing. We're getting where we need to go. Second season is when we kind of get where we're going. And then like season 3 is when like Riker grew his beard on Next Generation. And that's when a series really, that's when Community did their episode with like the multiverse. And it's when, we really start to get into gear. And I think that we're finally at that point where I have found my podcast footing, and I think that I'm finally ready to tackle this. And again, as always, if I make any mistakes in this, I challenge George Lucas to come on here and correct me himself.
That's really the only way to do it.
Yeah. So George Lucas, if you have better info about your own life than I do, come on, we'll send you a link. We'll work around your busy schedule.
If you catch a mistake, just know Matt planted that mistake intentionally to get George Lucas to come on the show. So no need to worry about it. We don't need to hear about it. It was all just there as a wink.
Yeah. When we talk about the fact that he has 3 belly buttons, that's specifically it's George Lucas bait. So
Got it.
So,
all right,
yeah.
well, take me on a journey, Matt. I am here for it.
So the story begins. So George Walton Lucas was born in 1913. He was in Modesto, California, and he spent his entire life as a small town businessman. He ran a stationery store called the L.M. Morris Company, and he prided himself on selling stationery to the people of Modesto, California. He had a tumultuous relationship with his son, and he died in 1991.
Oh,
The end.
okay.
But there is another, because this episode isn't about George Walton Lucas. This is about George Walton Lucas Jr. Because just like Henry Jones, Professor Henry Jones, he was named after his father, who had a massive shadow over him and was a big influence on him. And George
I'm super
Sr.
confused about why George Sr. named his stationery company L.M. Morris, because that does not seem like, it seems like it's named eponymously, and yet it is not his name.
It is a good question. That I could not find. But
Okay.
again, if George Lucas wants to come on here and tell me that
Well,
story, yeah,
right.
there we go.
Please explain. Please explain, George.
And so this is the thing, because when you look at George Lucas's works, especially, well, I mean, we've got THX 1138, Howard the Duck, Tucker, A Man in His Dream, many other projects, plus, you know, the Indiana Jones series and the Star Wars series. Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade had a big focus on Indy's relationship with his father, just like he was reconciling with his father at the time. And of course, the most notable father-son relationship in cinema history, Luke and Darth Vader. And George and his father did not see eye to eye on many things, and George Sr. really wanted Junior to join him in his stationary empire and rule it as father and son.
As you do.
So, in one interview, which I've linked to several books, documentary series, DVD series, all kinds of stuff, because granted, the stuff I'm pulling from is more than just this, because I watch literally every piece of media I can find about George Lucas, read every interview I can find, and I'm just like, he's one of my special interests. So we're going for easily documentable stuff, and one of my favorite books that we'll talk about in the book club. But anyway, this is one of the interviews that we've linked to in the show notes, where George Lucas is talking about his relationship with his father.
Yeah, and he says, parents try as hard as they can to do the right thing. They aren't purposely out to get you. They don't want to be Darth Vader. As Luke says, I know there is good in you, and I have faith in you, even though the rest of the universe thinks that you're a schmuck. Making movies was not something he thought was respectable. And that's George Lucas talking about his father. He thought I was going to fail, which was reasonable. And he adds with a laugh, I certainly wouldn't want my kids to work in the movie business.
Which is ironic, because he now has 4 children, 3 of which were in the prequels.
Yeah, I was going to say, I assume they work in the movie business.
Yeah, one of them became a professional MMA fighter. One of them became a writer on Clone Wars and was responsible for creating, like, the Witches of Dathomir and a lot of really important. Katie Lucas is responsible for a lot of really big arcs in Clone Wars. So if you get a chance, check her out. But again, this episode is not about her, so we'll go back to the man of the hour. And unlike his father, he was born in an entirely different year. He just turned 80. His birthday is May 14th, 1944, also born in Modesto, California.
I really wish his birthday was May 4th.
Yeah, because it would be very foreshadowing. Brian De Palma would not care for that, but we'll get to that. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Brian De Palma. So, as a kid, George Lucas did not own a television. So he listened to a lot of sci-fi radio. He read a lot of sci-fi magazines and comics. But his father finally broke down when George was a little older, and they got a TV. And he watched a lot of movie serials from the 1930s, like Flash Gordon and Commando Cody, which, again, if you're a fan of the prequels, you'll recognize that name. So he was very, very much into the fictional worlds around him. He was not a fan of school. He had a hard time paying attention in school. School was not his thing. He
Hmm.
really, really liked cars. He really, really liked machines, and he liked speed. He was very much Anakin Skywalker. He really, really liked studying the world around him, but he not in the way that school provided. I think that it was very difficult for him by all accounts, and he he did not want to pursue a traditional career. He was not good with the whole accounting, the whole business thing, which foreshadowing. Uh,
Hmm.
but on June 12th, 1962, right before his high school graduation, he was driving his souped-up Auto Bianchi Biancon. Uh, let's put your Italian culture to use. How do you
Okay, let's see
pronounce
if I
this?
can do it. Auto Bianchina.
So he was a big.
Bianchina.
If you are a car person, apparently you may know about this, but he really loved his car. He loved souping it up. He loved tinkering with the engine. So he was driving it very fast when another driver.
Oh, do you know
Oh,
what this is?
tell me what it is.
Oh, it's the little Bambino cars. You've seen these in all the like old school picture. And we're going to drop this in the show notes so you can see it. It's like those old Italian cars. They're little, they have the big circle headlights in the front, and they're kind of low and squat, and they're like from the Pixar movie Cars.
Oh, nice.
It's like the little, yeah. Yes. Okay. So
That would stand to reason because we're going to talk about Pixar in a little bit
it's
too.
like it almost looks like a Fiat. If
Nice.
you don't know what. Okay, so what, I think there's about a bad story about Takai. I have a bad feeling right now.
Yeah, so we have a bad feeling about this. So another driver broadsided him, flipped his car several times. He crashed into a tree, and fortunately his seatbelt snapped and threw him away from the car and saved his life. But much like Luke in Empire Strikes Back, he required a lot of emergency medical treatment. His lungs were bruised from severe hemorrhaging, and he decided that perhaps racing is not his path. So while he was recovering, he had an epiphany. As he was laying around watching old movies, he said, perhaps film will be the way that I go. So he had been planning to go to art school, but his father said he wouldn't pay for it. His father said, join me, and together we can rule the stationary empire. No. And he said, no, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. He walked out the door, went to Modesto Junior College, and he studied a lot of stuff because, as you know, a lot of us with bottom-up processing need some data. We have some data hunger. We want to learn as much about the world as possible. He studied anthropology, sociology, literature, and film.
Okay.
And he began shooting with an 8mm camera, filming car races, and he became interested in canyon cinema, where there were screenings of underground avant-garde 16mm filmmakers. And he said, hey, perhaps this will be my life. And his wise father said, oh, it's in the show notes.
There it is. Said, don't ever go into business with your hobby because you'll be taken advantage of and you'll be doing stupid things and doing things for love instead of money. And my father was right, said George. But with that bit of advice in my hoister, I did something that I was very passionate about, but I always kept my dad's little slogan next to me. You love this, but just because you love it, don't let somebody come and say you'll work for free.
That's an important piece of advice.
Boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries are good. And this actually came into play many times in his life and very much shaped his future. So when he left Modesto to attend film class at USC, turns out that he met a professor named Irvin Kershner. And Irvin Kershner was an old school filmmaker, has made many, many, many movies, which we will come to more in a little bit. And they got along quite well. And Irvin Kershner said that George Lucas was one of the most promising students that he had found. He had a lot of new outside of the box ideas. He did not follow traditional patterns. He was very, very much a learner. So he was a joy to have as a student. So after George got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film in '67, he tried to join the Air Force as an officer, but he was turned down because of many speeding tickets. And
I would be too.
yeah, because again, the man likes his speed. And
Mm-hmm.
then he was drafted for service in Vietnam. He was vehemently against the Vietnam War, which we will get into when we talk about that little movie called Star Wars. But he was exempted from the service after medical testing said that he had diabetes, the same disease that killed his paternal grandfather,
Huh.
George Lucas Sr.'s father. So he was exempt from service. He didn't have to go to Vietnam. And in 1969, he met a man named Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh,
And they
that's
were both
fortuitous.
students. They were both students. They were both filmmakers. They created American Zoetrope, a film company which has done little films, little independent films like The Godfather and many Apocalypse Now and many others. And this is where he met up with a few other students, uh, like Steve Spielberg, Francis Coppola, Marty Scorsese, Brian De Palma, and of course there was George Lucas. And he met this woman named Marcia Griffin. He enrolled at USC as a graduate student in film production in '67, and he worked under movie and studio logo designer Saul Bass and film editor Verna Fields for the United States Information Agency, where he met Marcia Griffin.
We love sharing stories of autistic culture, and if you are seeing yourself in any of these stories and you're wondering if maybe you're one of us, or maybe you're already diagnosed or self-diagnosed, and you want to know if Matt can help you live your life better and be more authentically autistic, check out his website at mattlowrylpp.com. That's Matt, M-A-T-T, Lowry, L-O-W-R-Y. And then that LPP, it stands for Licensed Psychological Practitioner. So head on over to mattlowrylpp.com and learn more about working with my buddy Matt.
By all accounts, Marcia Griffin said that he was an odd duck. They did not immediately get along. She said that he was a little stuck up. He said that she was off-putting, but they had an interest in film because film was one of George Lucas's special interests that he could talk about for hours and hours and hours. And when he met people like Steve Spielberg, Marty Scorsese, Francis Coppola, Brian De Palma, and Marcia Griffin, they could get together for hours and hours and hours and watch film after film after film, dissect the film, talk about themes of film, talk about the editing of films. And that's one thing that Marcia Griffin loved, because she initially had another job, but when she learned that film editors got paid $400 a week, she said, "Oh, hey, that's some good money," at the time. And then she realized that she was really good at it and she really, really loved it. So by that time, she was a professional film editor. George loved editing. He loved making scenes go fast. He did not like slow pacing of older movies. He wanted
Speed
something.
is a real theme.
Yeah, and much like we talked about in our first episode of the season, we'll one of George Lucas's biggest quotes is, "It's like poetry; it rhymes." Because just like we talked about with the first episode of the season and talking about motion and speed and seeing how these pieces come together, this was one of George Lucas's special interests because he had a big interest in motion. So they were both passionate about this and passionate about recutting and making edits and doing all this stuff. So he was a teaching instructor for a class at the U.S. Navy and teaching documentary cinematography. So that's where he directed his short film, Electronic Labyrinth THX 1138-4EB, which won the first prize at the 1967 National Student Film Festival.
Okay.
And this caused him to be awarded a student scholarship from Warner Brothers to work on a film of his choosing. So he worked on a film called Finnegan's Rainbow, which was...
wait, I've actually seen Finnegan's Rainbow. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So he worked on that, and it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and it was and it was highly revered among school students of the time. And
yeah, we had to watch it in school. That's what I was going to tell you. I watched it when I was in elementary school. They made us all go to the gym, and we had to sit crisscross applesauce and watch Finnegan's Rainbow.
Yeah, and that was George Lucas's big start.
I had no idea. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, and in 1969, he was one of the camera operators on the Rolling Stones concert film "Gimme Shelter."
Okay.
So he got.
I've also seen that for what it's worth.
And the Stones come back into this with a lot of cocaine and Cloud City and Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
So we'll get there. We'll get there. And that's about the time when he and Marcia Griffith decided that she should change her name to Marcia Lucas, and
I had a feeling you were gonna go there. I knew that was the girl.
That was the one, and she was the love of his life. And they
wait. Why do you say was? Did she die, or are they divorced?
Oh, there's a whole story about that. That's the reason Pixar exists.
Oh wow! Okay, more to come, you guys. Stay tuned. Yeah, I don't know anything about the whole Marcia thing.
Yeah. Marcia was integral in George Lucas's life, both personally and professionally, and she. Oh, yes.
So culturally, what I'm seeing so far is for sure special interests, cars, speed, motion picture, got that. Maybe a little PDA action going on.
Oh, like you wouldn't believe.
Okay, look, yeah. I was already feeling it.
That's where this book comes in, Empire Building, the Remarkable Real-Life Story of Star Wars. But, when we get into Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, the PDA comes in. But the biggest thing is, his social skills. Because he does not have neurotypical social skills. Marcia does, or did.
Oh,
so
okay.
Marcia was very much his tie to a lot of other people, because he very much would look down and mumble and not make eye contact. And the only thing that he would talk about is cars, speed, film,
right?
And that kind of stuff.
Obviously, the things that were important. Why would I talk about the things that are not important?
Anything else, not so much.
And that's why we often need a person to kind of smooth some of our edges in social situations.
And this is a thing that Francis Ford Coppola noted, because when in 1971, George Lucas turned his experimental short film into the big budget film THX 1138. And Marcia was his assistant editor on the movie. Francis Ford Coppola directed. And Francis Ford Coppola said, "Hey, George, this is fairly cold, impersonal, and a little bit alienating." And, that's the first mention of the word Wookiee. But, so it was a little off-putting. Coppola said, you may need a more human touch. You may need to be a little warmer because, a lot of people aren't getting this stuff. And it was actually so cold that Warner Brothers wanted a refund from Francis Ford Coppola for the money that they put into it.
Oh.
So George started Lucasfilm Limited because he was like, screw you guys, I'll make my own company. So with that, he decided that he was going to do a more emotional story based on his own life in a small town in California, racing cars right before college, right before the Vietnam draft, called American Graffiti.
Oh, okay. That was a huge part of my life. This is all making so much sense. My dad used to do drag races like that. That's actually how my parents met. Was my mom was one of the drag racing girls.
Yeah. And that's how he met Harrison Ford. Because that was Harrison Ford's first movie, and playing Bob Falfa, whose name would later become Boba Fett. But so he did this movie about teenage cruising because, again, he loved cars and speed, and that's how he related to other teenagers, through cars, through speed. He was very much Richard Dreyfuss's character. Not necessarily Ron Howard, but again, he became lifelong friends with Ron Howard, became lifelong friends with Harrison Ford, but he became a director for the first time. And most people loved it. He went from an experimental filmmaker to a warm and fuzzy filmmaker. His co-producer was Gary Kurtz, but somebody didn't like it. The head of Universal at the time, Ned Tannen, really, really didn't like it, but was super successful. Fun fact, this guy Ned Tannen also didn't like Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the guys who made Back to the Future, which is why Biff Tannen is named after him.
I love it. Okay, that's nice. That's nice.
So while Francis Ford Coppola was doing Godfather 2, Universal was harassing George Lucas. Lucas hated the studio system. Eventually, Fox, Alan Ladd Jr. released American Graffiti. Alan Ladd Jr. would go to Fox. Alan Ladd Jr. would go to 20th Century Fox. But anyway, Alan Ladd Jr. finally released American Graffiti. Ned Tannen didn't like it. It was super profitable. And when American Graffiti came out, it made George Lucas one of the hottest directors in Hollywood. So he said, I'm going to do the project I've always wanted to do. It's been in the back of my mind for 20 years. I am finally going to do the dream movie I've always wanted to do, Flash Gordon.
Yeah, okay.
But unfortunately, Dino De Laurentiis got the rights first, leading to the movie with the Queen score.
I was going to say, that's the Freddie Mercury Flash Gordon.
That's
it's all coming together, folks.
Yeah,
Listen to our last episode.
But again, Dino De Laurentiis wouldn't make that movie for another roughly 15 years. So, but George Lucas wanted to make that movie, but Dino De Laurentiis was sitting on it, so he couldn't make it happen. Fun fact, my own friend, Bill Hootkins, was in both Flash Gordon and the original Star Wars. He played one of the assistants who gets crushed by the spaceship at the beginning of Flash Gordon, and he played Jack Porkins in Star Wars, and we were pen pals for many years. But anyway, he couldn't get the rights to Flash Gordon, so he fell back on his love of world mythology, of anthropology, of sociology, myth, world religions, and especially Joseph Campbell and the connections of the monomyth. He wanted to study these universal themes and the psychological underpinning of human interaction because, like many people who are us, he wanted to study why humans interact like they do. He wanted to study these weird things called humans.
I get it, my guy.
He wanted to study what humans found important, these universal values that humans had, what made human beliefs, what made human religions, what made us the people that we are. And that was a special interest of his for many years. So he decided to write a treatment in 1973 called The Journal of the Whills.
Okay.
So most sci-fi films at the time made under $10 million at the box office, and this would cost around $11 million. So,
right.
So he made
difficult to get funding.
Yeah. People kind of looked at it and were like, huh, Wookiees, you say? What the hell is a Wookiee? So anyway, he did a 14-page story treatment, 1930s type adventure serial, very much Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon inspired. He took Universal, because of American Graffiti, had first rights of refusal. They refused. So he took it to United Artists. They didn't want that either. And he was like, fine, screw you guys. I didn't want you to have it anyway. You don't understand it. And again, he hated the studio system. He did not like other people having control over his baby. He did not like having other people over control of his work, because THX 1138 was heavily edited by the studio to make it more comprehensible for neurotypicals. American Graffiti was heavily edited by the studio because they didn't understand what he was trying to do. And he really, really, really wanted to tell the story that he wanted to tell in the way that he wanted to tell it, PDA.
Mm-hmm.
So he... Sorry, I burped there. So
yeah.
We'll
by the way, the whole wanting control over your art. This is one of the things I find working with authors. I work with mostly autistic authors, and they really, really, really want a big publishing contract. Mm-hmm. They really, really, really want to reach a lot of people. That's what they'll tell me. And then I say, okay, the way that works is they're going to license your IP, and then they get control over it.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that's not really going to work for me.
Yeah.
So it's very hard. I mean, obviously, hopefully we're going to hear that George Lucas has a big hit and that helps. But if you don't have yes, he died penniless. But if you are autistic and you want that creative control and maybe have a PDA profile, that sort of thing, it's like the money from investors for a film or a book or things like that come because you've had a hit.
Yeah.
And with that sort of leverage, you can have some say over how your creative voice is used. But otherwise, most of my authors self-publish because they don't happen to have had that random huge hit and they want control over their words. So,
And that's the thing. That's the trade-off. Do you go for what is destined to, like, look at the Percy Jackson series, where the movie was a big hit, but a massive deviation from the book, and a major disappointment for the writer, because you either go for mainstream appeal that makes all the money, or you have a very niche audience that makes a little bit of money but stays true to your voice.
right.
And hopefully this Star Wars thing takes off.
Yes, hopefully this Star Wars thing takes off. We haven't even heard of this.
No.
What happens next?
So he realized that when he was pitching this, people were just looking at him funny and saying, "What's a Wookiee? What's a droid? What's this? What's this?" So he hired a guy named Ralph McQuarrie to do some visualization to get funding. And Ralph McQuarrie painted some pictures of droids and of lightsabers and a sand crawler and an X-wing. So he would show vaguely what he's thinking to get these people. So he went to his friend Alan Ladd Jr., who is now at Fox, now the new head of creative projects at 20th Century Fox. And he knew Alan Ladd from his days with American Graffiti. And 20th Century Fox at this point was in a bit of a hole because it was known as essentially the CBS of film studios, where it had a very entrenched, very old audience, and they needed some new blood. The studio was struggling. They needed something new and exciting. And Alan Ladd Jr. said, "Hey, you're that guy who did that fun American Graffiti movie. I like you. I don't understand anything about this movie that you have, but I like you as a human being, and I'm willing to trust you to do something with it." So he thought that the movie was a little offbeat, but he figured that George Lucas has done some great things in the past and might do it. So he said, "All right, we'll make a movie with you."
Okay. Pause. I just have to shout out. If you happen to grow up with a certain amount of wealth and you happen to be a white man, particularly at this time, 1970, what are we at, 4 or 5?
1974, yeah.
Yeah. So it's 1974 and you're in circles like this and you're a white dude. Like, your chances of this, I'm not saying it's easy and I'm not saying you don't have to be talented, but your chances of somebody taking a risk on you and giving them money are like so much higher.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You can't just walk into studio executives usually, say, "Hey, trust me, bro," and the bro trusts you.
Right.
And
yeah, it's just like, ugh.
And that's a big thing, because can you read the last line of that quote that you just read?
Just because you love it, don't let somebody okay, so you love this is what his dad was telling him. You love this, but just because you love it, don't let somebody come in and say you'll work for free.
So George Lucas negotiated a writing fee, a directing fee, and he also negotiated something that nobody ever did before. He wanted control of all sequels and of merchandising.
Jesus.
And of course they said, "Merchandising? The Dr. Dolittle toys didn't sell anything. Of course you could have merchandising.
Whatever. Who's going to buy? Right.
Yeah.
Are they going to buy an R2D2 Lego toy? Come on.
Yeah, nobody's going to make a sequel to this nonsense. Sure, you could. We'll save some money on this. So he got the first deal in history where he was in control of all sequels and all merchandising, and he got all proceeds of all merchandising instead of Fox.
Wow.
So this is something that will come in handy in just a bit. Yeah. So he started writing this movie and was talking about the Force, and how about the Force connects all living things, and it was an amalgam of all religions and all spiritual beliefs. And he was like, "Hey, Marcia, do you think I should cut this out?" And she said, "No, this is probably the biggest thing that you have. You should put it in a lot more." And Brian De Palma said, no, that's a terrible thing. You should get rid of all of it. And at one point in the editing process, George Lucas went back and started editing it out, and Marcia had to shake some sense into him, because when he finally cut out the end scene where Han tells Luke, hey kid, may the Force be with you, she had to explain, no, that's the moment when you see that Han truly has a heart of gold and he's not a scoundrel, and that he's actually in this for the good cause. So again, it was a bit of a back and forth, and Marcia overruled Brian De Palma to keep the Force as a major factor in this movie. So he wrote the script. George Lucas loves plot. George Lucas loves themes. George Lucas loves characters.
I mean,
he hates dialogue.
Oh, got it. Action, fast, move it along.
Well,
proprioceptive needs. Right?
So this is a quote about George Lucas's writing.
You can type this shit, but you sure can't say it. And that was from Harrison Ford.
And these are some quotes about that those were of his directing style.
Do it again, faster. Anthony Daniels, he decided to redub him with Richard Dreyfuss.
Because he sees actors as different parts to put together. But, and Carrie Fisher said,
he had two directions, faster and more intense.
She joked that she was going to get him a board like a seal with two horns on it, one for faster and one for more intense, because that's the only thing that he said. Wow. So again, he loves speed, he loved quickness, he loved editing, he
But what do you think? Do you think this is a proprioception thing?
Could be, because again, he really, really loved motion.
Because he has to like feel it, right?
Yeah,
like
it's a visceral thing. And that's one of the big reasons why the pod race in episode 1 is such a big thing, because the man loves his speed. But again, he is not good with dialogue. He never has been good with dialogue. He's admitted that he really, really hates the writing process. He hates the writing process, and he hates communicating with people to tell them what to do. So he is not a fan of writing and directing. He just loves all the other parts of the movie.
I like the editing, the making the monster faces, the special effects. Yeah.
Just not that whole people thing. So he got his friends Gloria Katz and William Huck, his co-writers on American Graffiti, to rewrite the script, redo the dialogue, so that, it would be more natural. But Harrison Ford was still a little, off about it. He also didn't like handling money and scheduling things, because and again, not big on that. He's a big concept person. He loves details that he loves. He hates details that he doesn't hate. He has some proprioceptive or process complexity when it comes to money and scheduling. So he said, hey, Gary Kurtz from American Graffiti, will you be my producer? And Gary Kurtz is a man that you can imagine as a cross between Abraham Lincoln and Lurch from the Addams Family. So by all accounts, Gary Kurtz was a very large man who would sidle up to people and just loom over them and not say anything and be socially awkward at all times. So he was a fun guy, and he was the one hired to oversee everything, and we'll see how well that worked.
Okay. But I was gonna say I got Tim Burton vibes.
Yeah. So again, he needed somebody to protect him from the studio, to protect him from the staff, from the crew, from all this stuff, because he did not get that. He was very, very much Tim Burton followed in his shoes on this, because again, we'll get to that in a minute. But he started off, he had a script, he was getting a crew together, but he didn't have the ability to make the story that he wanted to tell, because no place in the world existed to do the special effects that he needed. And that's where our episode about ILM comes in. So he hired a whole bunch of autistic people to build ILM. He essentially wanted a lot of dogfights in space, which had never ever been even thought of before. He wanted the movie Dam Busters in space. So he got John Dykstra to invent the Dykstraflex computer-controlled motion control camera, and to build ILM. So John Dykstra hired a whole bunch of autistic people. This is where you can see, if you haven't already heard our episode about ILM, please check it out. We go into much more detail about ILM. But this is where we get into George's stuff. He was terrified of the casting process. He hated making small talk with the actors. He hated getting from point A of, hi, I'm George Lucas, to point B of, you're hired. So he did a co-casting session with Brian De Palma, and Brian De Palma was casting Carrie the same time that George Lucas was casting Star Wars. So George Lucas wouldn't look at the actors. He wouldn't talk to the actors. He was not a big fan of that at all, especially with like Anthony Daniels. Anthony Daniels said, "Hi, I'm Anthony Daniels," and he said, "Hi, I'm George Lucas." I'm like, and why am I here? He's like, looking for a robot. And so this was Anthony Dan. If you see the Star Wars Icons series on Vice, Anthony Daniels is a little catty, and this kind of explains why he and the guy who played R2-D2, Kenny Baker, had such a bad relationship. Also, Kenny Baker, notoriously alcoholic, whole thing. So imagine R2-D2 as being alcoholic, C-3PO as being super catty the entire time. Now that's where you get R2-D2 and C-3PO's personalities. So anyway,
there we go. Okay.
Yeah. So Brian De Palma was casting Carrie. George was casting Star Wars, and he stammered a lot. He was very bad at small talk, very awkward. He wanted Christopher Walken for Han Solo.
I see it.
He said absolutely not. No Harrison Ford. No Harrison Ford ever, because Harrison Ford was already in American Graffiti, and he didn't want to have the same people in two different movies. Because, Indiana Jones almost went to Tom Selleck for that very reason. So anyway, Marcia Lucas had a talk with the casting people and said, hey, Harrison Ford works part-time as a carpenter. Hire Harrison to build a door while they're doing the casting. So while they're doing the casting, Harrison Ford is standing over in the corner hammering on a door, just doing his day job. And apparently he didn't. And finally they said, hey, Harrison, can you come over and read with these people? So they finally got him to come over and read with these brand new actors. And they decided to, the role of Luke Skywalker went to William Catt from Greatest American Hero. But then Brian De Palma also wanted him for Carrie.
I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel. Okay, nice.
There you go. Yeah, but Brian De Palma wanted him for Carrie, so he went with his second pick, Mark Hamill, and they were going to hire this young woman for Carrie, but when this young woman heard that there were going to be some nude scenes, she said, "No, I'm not showing my boobs to anybody. You can't make me. I'll kill you first." And George Lucas said, "Who is that girl? I like her. She's a Spitfire," and she was Carrie Fisher. So he said, yes, that young woman who wants to murder you, I definitely want her for the role of Princess Leia, because that's the kind of spunk that we need. And boy, she was like that the entire movie, and was until the day of her death. She is and will always be an icon. She is one with the Force. May she rebel in peace. So, George Lucas's plan was to get Toshiro Mifune to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was a big fan of Hidden Fortress. He was a big fan of Akira Kurosawa. But Fox said, you know who's better? Alec Guinness. You know who gets butts in seats? Alec Guinness. And he said, all right, well, how about if we get that famously autistic guy, Peter Cushing, to be Grand Moff Tarkin? And they're like, okay, we can do that. And Peter Cushing showed up in slippers because he found the boots confining. See our mini episode about Peter Cushing and his role in Doctor Who, his role with Dungeons and Dragons, and his role with Star Wars. So George Lucas hired a bunch of people, including Roger Christian, who invented the used universe aesthetic and built essentially all the props out of cheap airplane junk, because he had a limited budget and didn't know how he was going to make a movie on $10 million. So he just bought a whole bunch of used airplane junk. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber is made from a Graflex flash handle, piece of a grenade, a piece of an airplane exhaust, and that's how you get Obi-Wan's lightsaber.
Yep.
Well, oh man, I meant to bring in my well, I'll show you because I have a legit
we've talked about it on another episode. I know.
I'll tell you what, edit cut here and I'll go grab it just in case we have it for YouTube. Hold on one second. And we're back. So, this used universe aesthetic was big because it grounded a very fantastic movie in reality, because this is a Graflex flash handle. It is a handle for a flash from the 1930s for a camera. You plug it onto the camera here, plug in a bulb here, have a giant reflector dish here. It goes poof, and then lights up the scene. And this is a lightsaber. And they essentially just flipped over the handle and screwed some windshield wiper blades on the bottom, and that was a prop. And because things were familiar, and you say, oh, yes, that is absolutely real. Oh, yes, that is absolutely real. It grounded the movie in a sense of reality so that audiences could accept this as being part of the real world. And that's one of the big things that, because there's enough small connections like this so that the audience believes it. This is real enough for the audience to say, yes, that is definitely a real object. I'm there with you. Whereas, fabricating all this stuff straight out of the blue might be a step too far, and you wouldn't have that same level of audience engagement. So this is why, again, the attention to detail is essential. George Lucas approved all of these things, and if he thought it was dumb, he threw it out and had people try again. He, again, with the PDA, he needed everything to be how he needed it to be for reasons with a capital R. So this did not work well when the crew did not work. This did not work well when the actors did not work. This did not work well when Anthony Daniels could not remember his lines. George Lucas just proceeded to start yelling at him and decided to redub him with Richard Dreyfuss. And
I love it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So he said, yeah, don't worry about it. Just mumble. We'll be fine. So they started shooting in Tunisia, and almost got attacked by the Libyan military, because the Libyan military thought that the Sandcrawler, the home of the Jawas, was a new sort of tank. And they thought that Tunisia was declaring war on Libya, and they almost started an international incident.
Oh, no.
Oopsie.
Whoops.
So in Tunisia, George Lucas had a lot of breakdowns. He had a lot of meltdowns. He had a lot of shutdowns, because everything was overwhelming for him, because he couldn't get things exactly as he wanted. Almost on a daily basis, he was non-functional. He was very, very overwhelmed by the chaos. Lots of conflict with the British crew. He had a British editor who decided that this was going to be a comedy and edited the entire movie as a comedy. The crew all decided to rebel against him at different points. And on their first shooting in Tunisia, there was a once-in-a-century a rainstorm, and it flooded out the set, destroyed a lot of sets. They had to restart from scratch. He was just destroyed. So they finally came back to the States and they finally went back to England, started shooting pickups, finally came back to the States, started shooting more stuff. His health was not good. He had lots of depression, not eating, not sleeping. He was coughing during takes, and he was very, very mad at himself. And of course, because of the poor editing from the British guy, because of the studio pressure that they were spending so much money, they didn't understand the daily footage they were seeing of a large man in a yak costume, of robots, of this force thing, of laser swords. They got very, very nervous about all the money that they were spending. And again, they went out to ILM and saw a bunch of shirtless hippies playing in a hot tub instead of reinventing motion pictures. So Alan Ladd said, hey, George, we really got to get some stuff together, or we're going to have to take you off your own movie. So he ended up in the hospital. He was very, very, very burned out. So the studio decided, the way that we're going to save money on this is just, we're going to end the movie after they rescue the princess from the Death Star, and that's just going to be it. There's not going to be any attack on the Death Star, no Death Star trench run. Don't need all those models. We'll save a lot of money. Yeah. We're going to lose a lot of money in the long run, but we knew that when we hired this George Lucas guy anyway. So, and
this sounds like a plan.
He had to fight to get it, and he knew that he had the sequel rights, so he decided he was going to hedge his bets and create a Star Wars sequel called Splinter of the Mind's Eye, written by Alan Dean Foster. It was going to be a very cheap sequel on a planet covered in fog, with Darth Vader and Luke and Leia finding a kyber crystal, which if you are into Star Wars, you know what kyber crystals are. It was different back then because it was a sequel that is non-canonical. But anyway, George said, I really have to get this shit done. I have to make my movie. I have to get it taken care of. So he went into ILM and he doubled down, and all of a sudden he was the boss from hell. He doubled down on everything. He oversaw everything. He hired Rick Baker and Phil Tippett, two of the greatest. Phil Tippett, Autistic is all get out. Two of the greatest creators of monsters. Phil Tippett created the holochess scene. They both created the Cantina creatures. They put all of this stuff. Phil Tippett described George as a mild-mannered cold fish, but he was very enthusiastic about space battles, but not about small talk. Okay. So anyway, lots and lots of work on this. He worked maybe 20 hours a day on this, put his health in jeopardy, incredibly burned out. So when the movie was finally finished, he was sure that it was going to be a disaster and people were going to hate him. So Marcia decided they should go to Hawaii on a vacation. And this was a tradition because if the movie did well, they were in Hawaii to celebrate. If the movie did poorly, the mobs couldn't find them.
Okay.
So turns out that it was a huge success. Their movie had an $11 million budget, and in 1977, it made $700 million.
That's pretty, I mean, that's not a bad return on investment, but it's something, especially with the other rights he secured, maybe he could improve on that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, it made $1 billion modern day at the box office, but that merchandising, man, nobody wanted to do merchandising at first, but after the movie came out, he finally decided to go with Kenner because Hasbro and Mattel both shot him down. Kenner said, hey, I think we can do that before the movie came out. So after the movie came out, Kenner said, oh, crap, we need something now, which led to the empty box campaign, where they sold empty boxes with vouchers for Star Wars figures as soon as the factory could make them.
No. Yes. I did not know that.
Yeah. Christmas of 1977, there was no Star Wars merchandise on the shelf. I mean, you got stickers and T-shirts and stuff. So Hasbro had the early bird certificate where parents would buy an empty box and you could write on there, send me action figures of Luke, Leia, Chewie, and R2. And as soon as they were made in 1978, they would be the first to get them.
Oh my God. Do they sell just the certificates now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that, is that like a collector's thing if you have one of those?
Not only is it a collector's thing, they've since reissued them. So you can get a reproduction of that certificate. The reproduction of the empty box. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it was very, very big. And he made all of the money. And his first thought was, oh good, now I can make my movies the way I want to make them. Because fuck the studios. So he created the blockbuster. Before Star Wars, there was no blockbuster. He created a faster movie. He created special effects. He changed the way that movies were made. And then he said, I now have the license to do anything that I want. But he accidentally became his father because he became a businessman. He didn't want to be a businessman, but his art necessitated that he become a businessman. He did not like dealing with money. He did not like hiring people. He did not like running companies. He wanted to play with his technology. He wanted to tell stories, and he wanted people to leave him the hell alone. And that is not
Sounds
the way.
Sounds like most autistic people.
Yeah, this is the way. So he built Skywalker Ranch with the money because he said, I want everybody in-house. I want John Dykstra off because right after Star Wars became a hit, ABC said, you know what we should do? Make a show called Battlestar Galactica and hire all the special effects people from Star Wars to make a Star Wars ripoff. And George Lucas was a little bit irritated by that, especially since John Dykstra was using George Lucas's equipment to make Battlestar Galactica. So he relocated all of his equipment to Skywalker Ranch, the place that he lived, and he hired all the people loyal to him, not John Dykstra, and that way he was able to make what he called a filmmaker's retreat. He also worked on developing Edit Droid, a system that later became Avid, which is the...
Oh, no! Really?
Yes.
Wow!
Because he envisioned a way to digitally edit everything. And
well, that worked out too.
He also decided that the way of the future was computer-generated graphics, so he created the Lucasfilm Graphics Group, which was later renamed Pixar.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So he decided to start working on The Empire Strikes Back, got his screenwriter from Raiders of the Lost Ark, Lawrence Kasdan, to write the script because, again, he did not like writing. He also did not like directing. So he got his old professor, Irvin Kershner, to direct. And he talked it into saying, it's not a sequel, it's a new story. Irvin Kershner liked it. But here's the thing. He hated the studio system. And when he was gearing up to make The Empire Strikes Back, the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild both sued him because there were not opening credits of the movie. He got away with it for Star Wars because it was written and directed by George Lucas, and therefore he could,
he would be the one complaining to him.
Exactly. But since other people were directing and there were other stars, they fined him a lot of money, and then he bailed from the WGA. He didn't work with the Screen Actors Guild. He didn't work with any of these people anymore. And that's led to problems on Return of the Jedi, which is why Spielberg couldn't direct Return of the Jedi, because Spielberg is very, very much WGA member. But he said, fuck the systems, fuck all the systems. I am out of the systems. I'm going to do the things the way that I want to do them. Because PDA. Yeah. And again, that's why reading his story in this book, I really related to it because I want to do things my way. So his plan was to supervise from home. Marcia planned on becoming a mother. They planned on overseeing the Empire from Skywalker Ranch. But Irvin Kershner went over time, went over budget. Gary Kurtz, the Abraham Lincoln Lurch hybrid, was apparently not great with telling people no. So things just sort of happened as they happened. George Lucas started pulling his hair out. Turns out that he got a loan from Bank of America to finance Empire Strikes Back. Bank of America called in the loan because they said, we don't trust you doing this independent filmmaking thing.
Really?
So they had to get a new loan for the Bank of Boston to pay off the Bank of America loan. And he was really, really stressed because he leveraged the entire, he literally leveraged the ranch to pay for Empire Strikes Back.
Wow.
So Lucas hated this and never forgave Gary Kurtz, and hired a new ghost producer to take care of it, Roger Kajanjian. So the same producer he would use on Return of the Jedi. So he was still stressed out. He was still in burnout. He had a lot of conflict with Marcia at the time. So they were not getting along great. Marcia was very much mom to Lucasfilm. George Lucas was very much a stodgy dad who had a poor relationship with his children, much like his own father.
Ah, interesting.
So
fascinating.
He started to become his father. He started to become more machine than man because he became part of the system. He became part of the company. He became the thing that he hated. He was a perfectionist.
I think this is also the thing, like you just kind of said burnout in passing, but
yeah,
I think very often I'm going to bring up my girl Taylor Swift here, but like,
oh yes,
autistic people approach things so differently that when we do have a viral hit, a big hit, it is often huge because it is so different. We're such paradigm breakers that everyone's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yeah. And then the amount of neurological stress that puts on us, because suddenly there's a million meeting requests, there's PR, there's press, there's decisions, there's so many decisions you have to make. How are you going to spend this money? Who are you going to hire? There's power that you have to learn how to negotiate that doesn't come in like normal growths. All of a sudden you go from having very little power to a whole lot of power, and you don't have the skills or training or resilience to know how to use that effectively. So you make mistakes, which anyone of any neurotype would.
Yeah.
But that's why I think burnout for us, especially in the arts, is so huge, because all we want is success. And so we'll work super, super hard, which could lead to burnout. But then when we get it, even that's not great for our nervous system.
Yeah.
And so it leads to addiction or anger or shutdown. And then, like, for me, one of the ways my shutdown showed up is I lost my voice.
Yeah.
I could not speak at all, but I was a paid professional speaker.
Yeah.
So then I had all this money. And so I was like, well, I'm going to use this money to solve the problem that I can't speak. So I had a million specialty doctors so that I could speak for like an hour a day with like tons of work. And then I hired ghost speakers, basically. I hired people to speak for me. But all that efforting to get people to speak for me and to get my voice to work for even an hour a day, all of that work led me to burnout. I was going to like 30 appointments a week. I was having like surgeries and then speaking on stages hours later because I was so busy. So no reason, no surprise he goes into burnout here. Success is not all it's cracked up to be when you have a fragile
success
system.
requires more success that requires more success. And like Taylor Swift and like the Disney episode, because like with Walt Disney, he got great success with cartoons, but he wanted to do a full length feature with Alice in Wonder, or with the Snow White rather. And of course, like George Lucas, he leveraged everything with a bank who really wanted their money because everything is money based. Right. And it knocked him down too, because we have these great imaginations and have great concepts, but making them profitable, that's the tricky part. Making them make money.
Or when they are profitable, making them make sense with our neurology. Because it's very hard to have slow I think it's harder as an autistic person to have slow incremental success.
Yeah.
It's either a total disaster or the biggest hit the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
And then like either way, death.
Yeah.
Thus our average lifespan.
Yeah.
When autistic people find a special interest, they go deep and have a lot of knowledge, even if they don't have that formal education background to go with it. If you want to capture your spin in a book, check out Angela's work at differencepress.com, differencepress.com, and find out more about becoming an author and establishing your credibility with a book.
Yeah, that's why he and Marcia started having problems.
Yeah.
But they were trying to have a baby, so they just decided to adopt a baby. Amanda Lucas, MMA fighter. So he did not like being a businessman. Empire Strikes Back came out. Everybody loved it. Everybody questioned the ending, and they said, "Why is the ending sad? Where's the next movie?" So, Return of the Jedi. He got Richard Marquand. He originally wanted, Twin Peaks, David Lynch.
Yes.
He originally hired David Lynch to do Return of the Jedi, and David Lynch accepted, and then called back the next day and said, "No, I decided I don't want to, because I want to do everything my way." And
okay.
And they were like, gotcha. So they got Richard Marquand, a British guy who would be easy to control, which is ironic because he ended up not doing anything, and George Lucas had to do all the directing anyway.
Yeah.
So, and again, they didn't get Gary Kurtz back because he was completely ineffective. Got Howard Kajanjian back. So George Lucas in 1983 was way more interested in filmmaking techniques and technology. He developed THX, the sound system.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He developed let's see here, Skywalker Sound. Let's see here, Lucasfilm Games, renamed Lucas Arts, products for the gaming industry. He made a board of directors. He was the chair of the board. Marcia was the co-chair.
Okay.
So he decided that he was going to make Return of the Jedi the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And he decided, because again, he had very strong opinions about Vietnam.
Oh,
he decided
right.
he decided that the Viet Cong were going to be the good guys.
Oh.
And so he decided that we're going to make the Viet Cong the stars of the movie. And they said, "Are you sure about that?" And he said, "Don't worry, we'll make them into teddy bears. No one will notice."
No one will even notice.
So this is the Ewoks. They're adorable. Lots of fans hate them, but they are cannibalistic Viet Cong, masters of asymmetrical warfare. And the lead Ewok was going to be played by Kenny Baker, but Kenny Baker had a habit of getting drunk and falling asleep. So, George Lucas struck up a friendship with a young boy named Warwick Davis, and Warwick Davis, playing Wicket W. Warwick, became the star Ewok, which later on, Warwick Davis later on went on to be Willow, because George Lucas wrote the entire Willow movie with Warwick Davis in mind as the star, with an entire heroic race of little people as the stars of Willow. Warwick Davis was later in all of the prequels and in Solo, a Star Wars story, and was in the Willow series on Disney Plus, and continues to work and be friends with George Lucas to this day.
All right.
And he also got his own little mini movie, Revenge of the Ewok. And if you watch it on YouTube, it's adorable because it's about Warwick Davis interacting with all these characters from Star Wars when he was 10. It's just a delightful little movie. Go check it out. So once again, George Lucas was very stressed, perfectionist, hands-on, did not like working with hundreds of people, liked his technology. One of the things that he decided to make his life easier, he was going to hire a whole bunch of people like Phil Tippett to come up with aliens and ships ahead of time so he could decide what alien to put where. So it would cut out some time so he knew what these things were looking like, because he appreciated all the details from all these people. Admiral Akbar was originally the character Rees, the character that would become Rees, but they couldn't decide on where his three eyes would be looking during the battle, so they decided on Calamari Man to become Admiral Akbar. It was a whole thing. So he got to play with his toys before they were actually toys. And this was a big pattern for him because he reshot, recut, focused on the movie. He was very, very invested in the parts of the movie, not very interested in interacting with the people. Loved the special effect, loved the monster, loved the aliens, loved the ships. Loved all the parts that Star Wars fans tend to like about the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Because we
surprise.
Love our collection of lightsabers. We love our prop replicas. We love our monsters. But, interacting with people, not his strength. He did not like being a businessman. He was burned out. Marcia was burned out. She was a little resentful that she gave up her career to be a mother. And she found comfort with a landscaper. So,
Their landscaper?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I did not see this coming.
Yeah, the guy
I was like, oh, they had a very nice garden. I've heard about their no.
The guy working on Skywalker Ranch, she started confiding in him. They struck up a friendship. To this day, she denies that that's the reason that she said she, quote, needed a timeout from the marriage. She wanted a break from the marriage, wanted to spend time with the landscaper. George Lucas said, no, if we're getting a timeout, we're getting all the way divorced. So in 1983, he needed her help to edit Jedi. She helped edit Jedi, but that's when they got divorced. And he became incredibly depressed because she was his person.
Mm-hmm.
She was his link to the human world. She was the one that helped him relate to everybody. She was the one who spoke out and, related to everyone. And she also wanted half of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted half of Skywalker Ranch. She wanted half of THX and Pixar and everything. So George Lucas said, no, this is war then. So they had a very lengthy and messy divorce that lasted about 3 years. And this is why Lucasfilm sold Pixar to Steve Jobs in 1986. And that money went to fund his divorce.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Wow. That is crazy.
Yeah. So that's the reason that Pixar exists today. And it's interesting that Disney has bought Pixar and Lucasfilm because they're back under the same umbrella again, because otherwise we would have been seeing CGI Star Wars way earlier. In 1983, his net worth was $60 million, but of course he had a lot of cash difficulties because of all the divorce. And eventually Star Wars kind of dropped off the public consciousness. He tried the droids and Ewoks cartoon, but again, there was a lot of divorce settlement. Marcia wanted half of everything, but George Lucas eventually paid her a cash buyout for everything. He almost had to sell the ranch.
Wow.
So he was very depressed, decided he didn't want to do movies for a while. So, but he decided he had a brief romance with Linda Ronstadt.
Okay.
But he decided that he being a father was his thing. So he adopted 2 more kids, and
On
he
his
said
own.
this, yeah, on his own
As
as
a
a single
dad.
parent.
Okay.
So he said this.
Wow. So I retired for 20 years and stopped directing movies so I could raise my children. I produced a few, but I could come to work at 10 in the morning. I could take days off. I didn't have to work weekends and all the other stuff that a poor peasant director has to do. Before that, I lived for movies first and everything else came second. After my kids came first, and I dabbled in movies and worked as hard as I could, but it wasn't a life or death situation for me anymore.
And like many autistic people that are in middle age and don't seem to have their special interests, your kids become your special interest.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this makes so much sense to me. It feels like when you're really hot in your special interest, it can feel like you're cheating on your special interest with your kids, or vice versa in this case, if you don't make your special interest your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So he is like, I will be. Wait, but do his kids love him? Is he like, is their dad drama?
It seems like they had a really great they still have a great relationship with him. I
Good.
mean, his middle daughter worked as a writer on the Clone Wars, so she worked with him pretty much every day.
Okay.
So, yeah, and they all have roles.
Love that.
They all have roles in the prequel trilogy. His middle daughter is in all 3 movies. His youngest son is the young Jedi that is killing clone troopers at the end when Jimmy Smith's Bail Organa screams and has to fly off because he was the last survivor of the Jedi Temple.
So he was like, I'm just going to like step back a little from work, focus on my kids. And then when they entered the workforce, it was every day was take your kids to work day.
Exactly. So he became a professional dad for 20 years.
Wow.
And that's the reason that he some of the projects included in that time was he's a big fan of Marvel Comics. So he really wanted to make a CGI movie about Howard the Duck. So he eventually made the Howard the Duck movie, but of course CGI didn't work the way it did back then, so they had to do a guy in a duck suit.
Yeah.
He worked on a project called Young Indiana Jones, and he envisioned Young Indiana Jones as not just a week-to-week TV series, but he wanted to release the entire series on Laserdisc with extensive backup material about every week Indiana Jones would go to some historical event, and on the Laserdisc you could research more about that historical event. It would have videos about the historical event, articles about that historical event. He essentially created Wikipedia articles for Young Indiana Jones before Wikipedia was a thing, before DVDs were a thing. He wanted to release the entire series on Laserdisc with branching chapters and everything. He wanted to invent home media as it currently is, all while being a dad. So over this time, again, he casually dabbled in filmmaking with Kurosawa's Kagemusha. I mangled that. John Cordy's Twice Upon a Time, Ewoks, The Caravan of Courage, Ewoks Battle for Endor, Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, Jim Henson's Labyrinth, because, again, he and Jim Henson were good friends. He wanted Jim Henson to do Yoda. Jim Henson said, I'm working on this thing called Dark Crystal, but my friend Frank Oz can do it. So that's how Frank Oz became Yoda, and they all became good autistic friends. So he worked on Ron Howard's Willow, Don Bluth's Land Before Time, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, More American Graffiti, Howard the Duck, Tucker, The Man in His Dream, Radioland Murders, and then his father died.
Aww.
So he was in a bit of a funk, but still, doing the whole studio thing, working on technology, advancing the art of movies. And then in 1993, due to the Star Wars novels and the comics, there was a lot of resurgence in interest in Star Wars after 10 years. So he said, maybe I'm ready to do the sequels or do the prequels. My kids are grown up. I can spend time away from them. Technology is where I want it to be. Let's test this out with the special editions. So we did a lot of tinkering with the original trilogy to make the special editions in '97. There is footage out there of me skipping school every single time to go see them in line because this is the way. And in 1999, that's when the prequels came out. But he also did a special edition of THX 1138 in 2004. But with the prequels, once again, he was not excited to do the business stuff, so he hired Ralph McQuarrie, the prequels, or the producer from Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, because Ralph McQuarrie was a bulldog. He didn't take anything from anyone except for George Lucas. He was essentially a rabid animal who put people in their place, with the exception of George, and he said yes to everything that George Lucas said, for better or for worse.
Yep.
So George Lucas was very, very excited to do his first ever all digital character. And he created a character with his son, Jet, based on the snack Juju Beans. Because this snack was called by his son, Jet, Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, no!
So he thought that this was hilarious. He decided that Jar Jar Binks was going to be the best character. He ran it past his son on many occasions. His son thought it was hilarious. His son loved everything that Jar Jar had going on. So he said, you know what? Let's make Jar Jar in every damn scene. There's 3,200 shots in this movie. Let's make every single one of them digital.
Oh my God. Then people. Then you don't have to deal with people, which is convenient.
And this is a big thing because when he was doing this movie, once again, he did not like directing. He did not like writing. Carrie Fisher was actually a script doctor for the movie to make the dialogue better.
Okay,
but,
that's funny.
One of the complaints with the prequels is that he would shoot a shot and the actors would be interacting with each other. But George realized that in post-production, he could cut a scene in half and on one side have the performance from one take, on the other side have a performance from another take. So the actors are not interacting with each other on the screen. Their eye lines don't mash up because George Lucas doesn't really notice stuff like, eye contact. So episode 1 has a really interesting thing where like Qui-Gon and Anakin don't really look each other in the eye. They look each other sort of near the eye. And it's fascinating if you know what to look for, especially at the dinner scene with Jar Jar. Nobody's looking each other in the eye the entire time that they're talking. And it's fascinating. And it makes it a really, really autistic scene unintentionally.
I love it.
So this is his thing. He decided all digital filming, all digital editing. He loved it. He had a great time. It was going to be the biggest thing ever. But, there's and the most merchandise ever created for a movie ever. So the audience review was mixed. There is a clip of me out there on the local news on the night the premiere showing of episode 1, and the guy says, "What'd you think about it?" And I said, 1999. I was 20 years old. And very enthusiastic in my Star Wars shirt and everything, coming out and saying, it was one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And one of the greatest movies you've ever seen. And then it cuts to the talking head, the newscaster, and they say, one of the greatest movies he's ever seen, huh? And the woman looks at the camera and says, well, we don't know that person, do we?
Okay.
So to this day, I have a grudge against that woman from WLEX 18. I will not mention her name, but we'll link the clip somewhere. But yeah,
okay, get me that link. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. So anyway, massive success visually, massive success for toys. Lots of people liked it. Lots of people didn't like it. Wash and repeat for episode 2 and 3. But here's the thing. Whereas George Lucas was very much the wide-eyed young Luke taking on the system, fighting an unjust system, fighting the studio system, fighting the Empire in the original trilogy. Now George Lucas is Anakin. He doesn't just fight against the system, he becomes the system. So Anakin's struggle with the dark side, Anakin's struggle with his emotions, Anakin's struggle with relationships, all of this is a direct analogy to George Lucas's own life, even losing Padme. Anakin loses Padme, but gains his kids and wants a better relationship with his kids. Anakin loses his temper. Anakin destroys the system because George Lucas destroyed the system. The system originally did not have blockbusters. The system did not have fast-paced editing. The system did not have merchandise. But he became the system. He became more machine than man. So he became the new empire himself. So when you look at all this, when you look at the prequels through George's lens, Revenge of the Sith is a movie that George Lucas both wrote and directed, bookending, the last movie that he both wrote and directed, which was Episode 4, A New Hope. So once again, Episode 4, A New Hope, Luke fighting the Empire. Episode 3, Anakin becoming the Empire.
Wow.
So
he hasn't confirmed any of this. This is just you.
He has in interviews talked about Anakin's mindset. He's talked about why Anakin has big emotions. He's talked about Anakin becoming the machine. And he's also talked about his struggles with running a business empire, running the multimedia conglomerate, and not being the artist that he wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about all this, because the prequels are not just, the prequels are George Lucas's journey. The Star Wars series is George Lucas's journey. It's very much Hero of a Thousand Faces. It's very much archetypal stuff. It's very much, layered in nuance with lots and lots of details about the Hero of a Thousand Faces. But when you get down to it, it is a very deeply personal journey about a man who wanted to create art and be one with storytelling, be one with mythology, to be one with the myth, with the force that binds us all together, and then accidentally creating a monster. And so for years after that, he decided that he wanted to do other things. He wanted to do the Clone Wars. So he hired he and his kids were big fans of this show, Avatar: The Last Airbender. And they said, I wonder who does all this. So it turns out Dave Filoni was a director on this show. And he personally called up Dave Filoni and said, hi, this is George Lucas. And Dave Filoni said, you got me. You're shitting me. I'm hanging up now. And he called back, no, seriously, this is George Lucas.
It was me.
Yeah, it was me. Please, can we talk? And he's like, oh shit, George Lucas. Oh my God. So they scheduled meetings, and he invited Dave Filoni down to the ranch, and they talked about the Force for a little bit. They talked about Dave Filoni's opinions. George showed him around and then said, all right, bye. And then George Lucas left the room. And then Dave Filoni says, all right, I don't know what to do now. And he just kind of wandered out, and he called his agent and said, so what happened with that? And his agent said, oh, he liked you. He hired you. Didn't he tell you? So Dave Filoni became his Padawan. He over the next few years, he told Dave Filoni everything he knew about the Force, about Joseph Campbell, about mythology, about movie making, and that's where Clone Wars came from. And it was cost efficient to do CGI. But George Lucas had his eye on something else. He really, really wanted to do a show that was completely green screen, where they could put in props and aliens and special effects in post-production and do it relatively cheaply. And this is his quote about that.
And he says...
Oh, this is about the show Star Wars Underworld.
It sits on the shelf. We have 50 hours, and we're trying to figure out a different way of making movies. We are looking for a different technology that we can use that will make it economically feasible to shoot the show. Right now, it looks like the Star Wars features, but we have to figure out how to make it at about a tenth of the cost of those features because it's television. We're working towards that, and we continue to work towards that. We will get there at some point. It's just a very difficult process. Obviously, when we do figure this problem out, it will dramatically affect features because feature films are costing between 250 and 350 million. When we figure this out, they'll be able to make a feature film for $50 million.
And this was his great passion. Star Wars Underworld was going to be about the criminal element that filled in the void of the Empire. His plan for the sequels, episodes 7, 8, and 9, were going to be Darth Maul lived. And Darth Maul became a criminal kingpin with his apprentice Darth Talon from the comics. And Han and Leia were going to be the heads of the New Republic. Luke was going to have a new Jedi Academy. One of his students was going to be a young girl named Kira, which would later become Rey from episode 7, 8, and 9, later become the name Kira from the Han Solo story. But he had this big plan about how the criminal element filled that power vacuum, and he wanted to tell these stories on a small set with a few people that he could direct at a time and just work on the technology in the background. And this technology later was perfected by Jon Favreau with the volume for The Mandalorian.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, in 2012, George Lucas decided to go the route that Jim Henson did and sell Star Wars to Disney because it was his understanding that he could get rid of the business part and just completely absolve himself of running a business and still be involved in the creative part, the technological part. Because when Jim Henson was in talks with Michael Eisner to sell the Muppets to Disney, Michael Eisner told him that he would get to be an Imagineer and do Disney rides at Disneyland, like Muppet Vision 3D, and that he could still do any project he wanted and not have to worry about the business part. He would take care of the business, but again, all the negotiating killed Jim Henson. And the same thing happened with Disney, that he really, really wanted to be in, he still wanted to have a big creative element, but not do the day-to-day business running because he was getting older and he really, really hated it. So they said, yes, you'll absolutely have control over this. You'll have control over filmmakers. You'll have control over this. And he said, well, I like this kid that does a lot of like Spielbergian stuff, J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams said, yeah, I don't like any of those ideas. I want to do my own stuff. And Disney said, all right, let's let him do his own stuff. And George said, wait a minute, I had plans. You said we would do the plans. And they said, well, he's J.J. Abrams, this. So George Lucas reluctantly promoted episode 7. He liked the visuals of episode 8, but he was nowhere to be seen with episode 9 because he hated it so much. So he said that he really liked Rogue One and he loved Obi-Wan Kenobi. And these days, because of his relationship with Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, he's on the set all the time with The Mandalorian and Ahsoka and the new series on the volume. And he loves the technology and he loves, getting into all this stuff. But yeah, he had to get on with his life. So in 2006, he began dating Melody Hobson, the president of Ariel Investments and chair of DreamWorks Animation. And they announced their engagement in 2013 and married in June 22nd, 2013 at Skywalker Ranch. They've got one daughter together, born via surrogate in August 2013, but I don't know much about her. Okay. And he's currently working on the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art to be completed in 2025. It's the first museum to focus exclusively on storytelling through images. Let's see here. And the belief that visual storytelling connect us and help shape a more just society. An essence on the Force. It's got a big collection focusing on paintings, sculptures, murals, photography, comic art, book, magazine illustrations, the art of filmmaking, and explores narrative art's potential to prompt questions, invite opinions, inspire community, and move people to think about the impact of images on our world. So it's we've included a link to the Lucas Museum website, and it looks like it's going to be a really big thing. But George Lucas is a socially awkward man who does not like eye contact or small talk, loves talking about cars, things that move fast, technology, film editing. He loves mythology. He loves sociology. He loves how myth can make the world a better place. He's got a lot of social justice sensibilities. I really think that there's a lot of evidence that says that he firmly belongs enshrined in the Autistica Hall of Fame.
Ah, for sure. For sure indeed.
So
Wow. All right.
So yeah, this is
that
my
took
spiel.
some
I'm sticking to
twists.
it.
That took some turns. Why do you feel like you love George Lucas so much? Do you feel like it's that the output of his work, or who he is, or the intersection, or the amount of time? What is it you think that makes it for you?
Well, as we've talked about universe building, he's big on building the universe. He's big on studying the links. I went through a period where I studied all religions because I wanted to know the absolute universal truth of everything. I love the concept of the Force. I love the worlds that he has built. I love his uncompromising vision, because I understand what it's like to want to do something, but also have difficulty articulating it and getting it through to multiple people. I hate managing a business. I hate doing taxes. I hate the minutia. I hate the minutia of the boring stuff. I love the minutia of the cool stuff, because I will go monotropic on stuff like the origins of the Force and Joseph Campbell. If you get a chance, watch the entire series, The Power of Myth, with Bill Moyers.
Oh, yes.
Where they talk about Joseph Campbell and George Lucas's relationship with the Force, and it's fantastic. He created a world that I want to live. He created a world to impart not just a community, but impart a sense of right and wrong, about how to live a life that is, a good life, the light side of the Force, where, it's fear, anger leads to the dark side. They are quick to join you in a fight. You have to control your emotions. And these are all big things that Yoda tells to Luke, Yoda tells to Obi-Wan, Yoda tells to Anakin, and nobody listens to Yoda, damn it. Which is why the series happens. Because you have to be aware of your emotions, be mindful of your emotions. They will join you in a fight. You must be calm. You must, feel the Force and feel what you need to do and listen to your, quiet self. These are all big lessons that I've had throughout my life, because I've got big emotions, and I there are many times when the words of Yoda have, as a matter of fact, behind me on my shelf, I've got all sorts of autistic heroes that have joined me throughout my life, and like Ron Swanson over here, and Lucy Van Pelt from Peanuts, the Beast from X-Men. Mr.
Turn back
Rogers.
to the microphone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I need to take the microphone with me. Where is Yoda? Oh, man. I've moved Yoda someplace.
Matt has lost Yoda. Matt has
right
lost
here.
Yoda.
So,
oh, no. Yoda has been found. There is no try.
That is one of the things. Oh.
Judge me by my size, do you?
And that's the thing. Do or do not. There is no try is one of my mantras. Whenever something interesting comes up, I don't try it. I will put it out there. I will put out the amount of effort necessary to get to put my best effort into this, because I don't half-ass things that I find important. So again, when opportunities come along, like a podcast, I say, yes, I will do that. Not, I will try that.
Right. Right, my friend. And we have done 2 seasons of this.
2 seasons. It's big. And we're going to get bigger next season and do even bigger things. And I think it's going to be really, really neat. It's been a fun ride so far. And I can't believe we've been doing this for 2 seasons so far.
I know, it's been so fun, and like cool stuff has started. Oh, Yoda still has opinions on this, but Cool stuff has started happening. We got nominated, or I guess we're a finalist in the Quill Podcast Awards.
That's neat.
Which is kind of cool. So, and
I think 3 finalists.
One of 3 finalists in the social and cultural category. So that was fun. I've gotten calls. Obviously, we had our first celebrity interview this season. So that was fun. And we've got some more calls from PR agents coming in. So we appreciate that.
I can't believe the BBC knows who we are. That's crazy.
The BBC knows who we are, or at least their PR companies.
Yay!
And then,
because the BBC is a singular entity with a hive mind that has targeted us. Yeah,
and then, as you know, and then, as you know, season 3 will be the season that I move physically closer to Russell T Davies, thereby beginning my process of becoming his best friend.
Yeah, I can't wait to see your Russell T Davies jar that you're going to keep in the basement. That's man-sized.
My man's okay, that's an idea. So I have gotten very close. So first of all, they are currently filming in my town in Bristol, which is like, I'm in a suburb of Bristol. They are filming Doctor Who right now. I don't know that Russell T Davies is there, but I do know that Doctor Who is minutes from my home. I also have a friend who bumped into Russell T Davies at a cafe in Cardiff. I have the name of that cafe, and I can see Cardiff from my house.
So I can't wait for there to be a large box with a stick propping it up with a sandwich underneath that says, "For Russell T Davies only, not a trap."
Not a trap. Yeah. Correct. I'm luring him in. Yeah. I'm getting closer. So each, you were going to ask me what was my favorite thing about being autistic this week. Yes. And I'm going to tell you anyway, other than that I am making my moves on Russell T Davies. Each room in my new house has a specific color and color theme. And every single thing is like, or I have not put everything away, but in the rooms that I have done, everything is organized and alphabetized and color coded and exactly where I want it. There are 2 rooms I don't get any say in, but I can do it's do or not do, do not try, do or do not do not. Yeah. Because my husband's office and the kitchen, he is the cook in our family. My husband's off in the kitchen. There's no trying. I cannot, they're his rooms. They're going to be his way. I can't have them partially organized. There's going to be spoons in the fork drawer, just like mismatched utensil. Things will be wild, and I'm going to be fine with it. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to make tea and chicken nuggets. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do all the things I can do. But in the rooms I have control of, everything will be like color coded and alphabetized, and I'm buying a lot of storage containers. And I shared with you the thing from this week that made me happy is to be autistic. The very first thing I did once my furniture was moved into my home was I pulled out every single board game. I matched them by type because we've got about 20 different Catans.
Of course.
We have a bunch of all the
one
expansion
does not just have one Catan.
Right. Exactly. All the important things. So first I match them by type, then I match them by size, then I match them by kind, strategy games together, puzzles together, things like that. And then we have enough space in our new house that I was able to put them back by kind, by type, by game name, and of course by size.
Of course.
That was the first thing I did. It was probably
multiple
2
levels
hours.
Of organization. Yes. Yes.
But my games are put away. So if anybody's coming to Bristol and you want to play games, I found all the pieces. Everything's in the right place. I have a whole shelf for, you probably don't know this about me, but I'm a huge cribbage fan, which is a card game.
Unaware.
It's a weird old people card game. If anyone would like to come play cribbage with me, also life goal, anybody would like to teach my husband and I how to play bridge. I would like to have a bridge night. I don't know what bridge is. I think there are pairs. I think there's betting. whatever it is, if it's cards, I'm magic with cards. So
I'll bring Emmett sometime and we'll just build a bridge together. It'll be great.
Oh, that's a different kind of bridge, but I'll also build bridges.
Yeah.
You can see a bridge from my house. You could sort of see the Severn Bridge, but not quite. It's not quite Emmett levels of an epic bridge view. But we do see ships, though. If he can get into ships, we have the most amazing. Just this week alone, I have seen, first of all, every night at sunset, families come out. This is very pleasant for me. So if this sounds sensory bad, it's actually sensory good. Families come out right in front of our house on the beach and they skip rocks. And there's giggling and rock skipping. And like, it is my greatest joy. I love it so much.
You've got a house in paradise.
And then so far I have seen stand-up paddle boarders, kayakers, sailboats, motorboats, cruise ships, container ships, and there's a nuclear power facility. So I saw some sort of ship carrying like a nuclear fuel rod, I think. But I have seen a lot of maritime action in my first week.
Nuclear vessels.
In Bristol. Yes, nuclear vessels. So close. I think it's just nuclear energy. It's all good. I don't know. Fuel rods, something. How bad could it be?
Yeah. Well,
yes.
if the Russell T Davies you keep in your basement starts changing color, you'll know.
So. Then I'll know. Yeah, then we'll find out. Anyway, that's what I got. Someday soon, my house is going to be organized and you will come to it and you will appreciate my organization as I so have appreciated your organization.
Absolutely, yes.
It was correct. Things are correct. And they will be correct again in a new location.
Because otherwise the brain just screams. That's just
correct.
How it works.
Then that's the option. So no. Oh, there is one brain scream. Here, I'll share this with everybody. When we got our house, there was a washing machine, but they didn't leave their dryer. So we had to replace the dryer, which is fine. Like that sometimes happens. I don't know. They want to take their dryer. So I found the matching dryer. The matching dryer, which is the one I had to have, was $500 or 500 pounds, which is even more. And then there was a perfectly fine dryer with equal size and ratings that didn't match for 200 pounds. It was such a big price difference. And I could see the look on my husband's face when I was like, we're going to pay $300 more for them to match. And I'm like, this is insanity. It is a room with the door closed and I do not do laundry. This is also in my husband's job. So I'm like, I cannot argue to spend 300 pounds more because I want the washer to match the dryer in a room I won't go to for a machine I won't use. And so I talked myself off a ledge. It literally took me 2 days, but I purchased the 200-pound dryer.
That is the rational choice. I would have asked, could you have bought with $300 the matching washer, and then you have like a stack of washers?
There you go. Right. That's also something I did think of. And then I'm like, I walk in there and I'm like, do not be upset about the dryer. You don't need to dry the clothes. Don't be upset. It doesn't match. But I have to talk myself down when I go in there, but I don't go in there often. I'm in there more because I'm moving. It's going to be fine. I'm going to survive mismatch washer and dryer.
I just look forward to the tour of your house where you say, and this is the game room, and this is the kitchen, and fuck you, usher. So
don't look in there. I have a whole mantra. I have a whole therapy. I've got it. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to be able to walk in there someday without having to do all the work.
Yeah, that'll be a good thing.
Anyway, moving is fun, Matt. You next.
It terrifies me. I've been packing up the books. I've ordered mug protectors because I've decided that because again, thanks to our TeePublic store that sells all of our Autistic Culture podcast mugs, many of which I've ordered because despite being a member of the show, I have to buy my own merch that I create.
Sorry.
Such as and if you're a subscriber, you get a better deal than I do. So take that offer. But anyway,
that is true.
But they ship them in shipping containers that keep them safe through the mail. So I thought, if I just buy a ton of those, that'll make moving way easier. So I've bought a ton of those to pack up every single one of my mugs so that they won't be destroyed from one location to another.
Yeah,
So
that was the right choice. That was the right choice.
Yeah.
This is the way. Well, listen, you guys, we're going on hiatus. So if you're listening to this live when it comes out, please have an amazing summer. We have some special surprises while we're gone that we have prepared for you. There are prizes and surprises and so much magic coming your way while I finish organizing every room in my house and Matt finishes maybe packing boxes.
That's going to be a long summer.
It's going to be a long summer. We're going to need this hiatus. We hope you enjoy your summer, and we hope you enjoy the special episodes that will be running. Give us a little George Lucas special episode shout out on this one. What are we doing, Matt, in honor of George Lucas and special episodes?
Well, I mean, we're going to be rerunning the episode about ILM. So if you haven't heard it yet, this is a perfect time to catch up because ILM is one of the first episodes we did, and one of the reasons why autistic culture is incredibly important. So it makes a great prelude to this or follow up to this. So yes. I think that you'll be happy with it either way.
We're going to make each and every one of these reruns special for you. We look forward to seeing your comments and hearing from you. It's a great time to sign up to be a paid member and catch up on our book club. And then we will meet you back here in the autumn. I can't call it the fall anymore, Matt. I've moved to a country where we have autumn instead of fall.
Yeah, after that whole Rome thing, they took issue with it. So
they really did.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so punny. All right, we'll see you back in the autumn. Enjoy our break. Enjoy our special episodes, and we'll see you guys soon.
Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Autistic Culture Podcast.
If you like this show, you can help other people find it by taking a few minutes to rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
You can find out more about writing your book with me at differencepress.com. That's difference, DIFFERENCE, press, PRESS.com.
Or getting a psychological evaluation or consult with me at www.mattlowrylpp.com. That's M-A-T-T, Matt Lowry, Lowry, LPP, as in licensed psychological practitioner.com.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and remember,
no one ever changed the world by being like everyone else.
Special thanks to our content manager, River Robbins, and Aaron Stoner, our producer, for making us look and sound good.